Afghanistan national game buzkashi, Albania national game football, Algeria national game football, Andorra national game football, Angola national game basketball, Antigua and Barbuda national game cricket, Argentina national game football, Armenia national game wrestling, Australia national game cricket, Austria national game football, Azerbaijan national game wrestling, Bahamas national game cricket, Bahrain national game football, Bangladesh national game Kabaddi, Barbados national game cricket, Belarus national game ice hockey, Belgium national game football, Belize national game football, Benin national game football, Bhutan national game archery, Bolivia national game football, Bosnia and Herzegovina national game football, Botswana national game football, Brazil national game football, Brunei national game football, Bulgaria national game football, Burkina Faso national game football, Burundi national game football, Cabo Verde national game football, Cambodia national game Bokator, Cameroon national game football, Canada national game lacrosse, Central African Republic national game basketball, Chad national game football, Chile national game rodeo, China national game table tennis, Colombia national game tejo, Comoros national game football, Congo national game football, Costa Rica national game football, Côte d'Ivoire national game football, Croatia national game football, Cuba national game baseball, Cyprus national game football, Czech Republic national game ice hockey, Denmark national game football, Djibouti national game football, Dominica national game cricket, Dominican Republic national game baseball, East Timor national game football, Ecuador national game football, Egypt national game football, El Salvador national game football, Equatorial Guinea national game football, Eritrea national game cycling, Estonia national game basketball, Eswatini national game football, Ethiopia national game athletics, Fiji national game rugby union, Finland national game pesapalla, France national game football, Gabon national game football, Gambia national game rugby, Georgia national game rugby, Germany national game football, Ghana national game football, Greece national game football, Grenada national game cricket, Guatemala national game football, Guinea national game football, Guinea-Bissau national game football, Guyana national game cricket, Haiti national game football, Honduras national game football, Hungary national game water polo, Iceland national game handball, India National Game Hockey, Indonesia National Game Badminton, Iran National Game Wrestling, Iraq National Game Hurling, Ireland National Game Football, Israel National Game Football, Italy National Game Football, Jamaica National Game Cricket, Japan National Game Sumo Wrestling, Jordan National Game Football, Kazakhstan National Game Kokbar, Kenya National Game Athletics, Kiribati National Game Football, North Korea National Game Football, South Korea National Game Taekwondo, Kosovo National Game Football, Kuwait National Game Wrestling, Kyrgyzstan National Game Wrestling, Laos National Game Sepak Takraw, Latvia National Game Ice Hockey, Lebanon National Game Football, Lesotho National Game Football, Liberia National Game Football, Libya National Game Football, Liechtenstein National Game Football, Lithuania National Game Basketball, Luxembourg National Game Football, Madagascar National Game Rugby, Malawi National Game Football, Malaysia National Game Badminton, Maldives National Game Football, Mali National Game Football, Malta National Game Baseball, Marshall Islands National Game Football, Mauritania National Game Football, Mauritius National Game Football, Mexico National Game Charreria, Moldova National Game Football, Monaco National Game Football, Mongolia National Game Wrestling, Montenegro National Game Water Polo, Morocco National Game Football, Mozambique National Game Football, Myanmar National Game Chinlone, Namibia National Game Football, Nauru National Game Football, Nepal National Game Volleyball, Netherlands National Game Football, New Zealand National Game Rugby Union, Nicaragua National Game Baseball, Niger National Game Football, Nigeria National Game Football, North Macedonia National Game Football, Norway National Game Cross Country Skiing, Oman National Game Football, Pakistan National Game Hockey, Palau National Game Baseball, Palestine National Game Football, Panama National Game Baseball, Papua New Guinea National Game Rugby League, Paraguay National Game Football, Peru National Game Football, Philippines National Game Arnis, Poland National Game Football, Portugal National Game Football, Qatar National Game Football, Romania National Game Oina, Russia National Game Bandy, Rwanda National Game Football, St. Kitts and Nevis National Game Cricket, St. Lucia National Game Cricket, St. Vincent and the Grenadines National Game Cricket, Samoa National Game Rugby, San Marino National Game Football, Saudi Arabia National Game Football, Senegal National Game Wrestling, Serbia National Game Water Polo, Seychelles National Game Football, Sierra Leone National Game Football, Singapore National Game Table Tennis, Slovakia National Game Ice Hockey, Slovenia National Game Skiing, Solomon Islands National Game Football, Somalia National Game Football, South Africa National Game Rugby, South Sudan National Game Basketball, Spain National Game Football, Sri Lanka National Game Volleyball, Sudan National Game Football, Suriname National Game Football, Sweden National Game Ice Hockey, Switzerland National Game Schwingen, Syria National Game Football, Taiwan National Game Baseball, Tajikistan National Game Wrestling, Tanzania National Game Football, Thailand National Game Muay Thai, Togo National Game Football, Tonga National Game Rugby, Trinidad and Tobago National Game Cricket, Tunisia National Game Football, Turkey National Game Oil Wrestling, Turkmenistan National Game Wrestling, Tuvalu National Game Football, Uganda National Game Football, Ukraine National Game Football, United Arab Emirates National Game Football, United Kingdom National Game Cricket, United States National Game Baseball, Uruguay National Game Football, Uzbekistan National Game Kurash, Vanuatu National Game Football, Vatican City National Game Football, Venezuela National Game Baseball, Vietnam National Game Football, Yemen National Game Football, Zimbabwe National Game Football,